A billionaire CEO's luxury car breaks down on a stormy night near a struggling orphanage. Little does he know that behind those weathered walls are 3 young girls with his exact eyes, smile, and determination. Life is about to change forever. For a man who thought he'd never have children and triplets, who never thought they'd have a father. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The San Francisco fog rolled thick across the bay as Maxwell Max Donovan stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, watching the city lights blur into hazy constellations below. At 43, he commanded Quantum Horizon, America's fastest-growing tech empire, with the cool precision that had earned him the nickname the Algorithm among industry insiders. Lightning split the darkening sky, illuminating the sleek, minimalist office with its single modern desk, ergonomic chair, and the 3 large monitors displaying real-time data from Quantum's global operations. Max's reflection in the glass revealed a man whose sharp features and prematurely silver hair at the temples gave him an air of distinguished authority beyond his years. "The Beijing deal is locked in," announced Sofia Rivera, Max's chief operations officer, as she entered without knocking, the only person in the company with that privilege. "Stock will jump 10 points by morning." Max nodded without turning. "And the board's concerns about my work-life balance?" His tone made air quotes unnecessary. Sophia sighed, setting down her tablet. "Still an issue. The Baker acquisition makes us too visible. Shareholders are pushing for a more relatable CEO, someone who doesn't live exclusively in the office." "And Lab, they hired me for results, not relatability," Max replied, finally turning to face her. His striking blue-green eyes, unusual in their intensity and color, narrowed slightly. "My personal life is irrelevant to our market position." "Not anymore," Sophia countered. "The Timmons Corporation merger will put us under even more scrutiny. You need to show stability." Max's jaw tightened. "I am the definition of stability. 15 years without a single quarter below projections." "Personal stability," Sophia clarified. "Family, connection, something beyond the algorithm." Max's face closed like a vault. They both knew what she was asking was impossible. The medical report from his 20s remained a permanent fixture in his mind. Severe oligospermia, effectively sterile. His brief marriage to Catherine had crumbled under the weight of that diagnosis, her desire for children incompatible with his biological reality. "The board meeting is at 8 a.m., he said, effectively ending the conversation. "I'll have the Timmons projections updated by then." After Sophia left, Max returned to the window, watching the storm intensify, the loneliness that occasionally pierced. His carefully constructed isolation felt sharper tonight. His Malibu beach house stood empty, as did his cabin in Tahoe and the brownstone in Boston. He owned spaces across the country, but inhabited none of them. This office, 60 stories above San Francisco, was the closest thing he had to a home. At 11 p.m., with the storm now battering the building, Max finally powered down his workstation. The quarterly reports could wait until morning. He took the private elevator to the underground garage, where his custom Aston Martin waited, a machine as precisely engineered as the life he'd built. The coastal highway stretched before him, empty in the late-night storm. Max preferred driving at this hour when the road belonged to him alone. The dashboard navigation indicated his Malibu house was 45 minutes away, but Max had no particular desire to arrive. The journey itself was the point. Movement without arrival, purpose without connection. 20 miles outside the city, on a particularly desolate stretch of highway, a warning light flashed on the dashboard. The car's performance immediately deteriorated, the engine sputtering before dropping to a crawl. "Diagnostic," Max commanded the car's AI system. "Multiple system failure detected," the pleasant female voice responded. "Transmission malfunction. Emergency protocols engaged." Max guided the vehicle to the shoulder as it lost power completely. Rain hammered against the windshield as he reached for his phone to call his assistant. No signal. He glanced at the navigation system, now flickering intermittently. The screen showed his location, a rural stretch near the small coastal town of Cypress Cove. The nearest service station was closed at this hour. There appeared to be only one structure within walking distance, something labeled Harmony House. Approximately half a mile down a side road, Max stared at the rain lashing against the windows. His options were limited: spend the night in the car or seek shelter and assistance. Neither appealed to his preference for control, but practicality won out. Grabbing his leather briefcase and suit jacket, he stepped out into the deluge. The rain soaked him immediately as he made his way down the poorly maintained side road. His Italian leather shoes, never intended for such conditions, collected mud with each step. Lightning periodically illuminated the path, revealing an aging sign that read, "Harmony House Children's Home, Esther, 1963. An orphanage. The irony wasn't lost on him. The building itself emerged from the darkness, a large Victorian structure that had clearly seen better days. Peeling paint and missing roof tiles suggested financial struggles, but warm light glowed from several windows, promising occupation. Max approached the wide front porch, taking shelter from the rain at last. He pressed the doorbell, hearing it echo inside. After a moment he heard movement, and the porch light flickered on. The door opened to reveal a woman in her 50s with graying hair pulled back in a practical bun. Her clothes were simple but neat, and deep smile lines framed tired eyes. "My goodness," she said, taking in his drenched appearance. "You're soaked through." "My car broke down half a mile back," Max explained, his usual commanding tone softened by necessity. "I need to use a phone." "Of course, come in before you catch your death." She stepped aside, gesturing him into a worn but clean entryway. "I'm Sarah Mitchell, the director here." "Maxwell Donovan," he replied automatically, stepping inside and immediately noting the contrast to his antiseptic corporate world. This place was lived in, slightly chaotic, with children's artwork covering the walls and the faint smell of recently baked cookies in the air. "The phone's in my office. The storms knocked out the cell towers, but our landline should work." She led him down a hallway lined with photographs of children. "We're usually all asleep by now, but the storms kept some of the little ones up." As they passed a doorway, Max glimpsed a cozy room where a young woman was reading to several children, gathered around in pajamas. The domesticity of the scene felt alien to him, like observing life on another planet. Sarah's tiny office contained a desk buried under paperwork, a filing cabinet with peeling labels, and a phone that looked at least a decade old. Max eyed it. "With skepticism, you can call a tow service, but I doubt anyone will come out in this weather until morning," Sarah said, handing him the receiver. "You're welcome to use our guest room. It's simple but clean." Max hesitated, staying in a stranger's home. An orphanage, no less, violated every boundary he maintained. But the rational alternatives were limited. As he dialed his assistant's emergency line, movement in the doorway caught his attention. A small face peered around the frame. A girl about 9 years old with sandy blonde hair and curious eyes. "Lily, you should be in bed," Sarah said gently. "The thunder's too loud," the girl replied, her gaze fixed on Max with unusual intensity. "Who's he?" "Mr. Donovan is just using our phone because his car broke down." "This is Lily, one of our residents," Sarah explained. Max nodded awkwardly in acknowledgement, uncomfortable with children at the best of times. But something about the girl's direct gaze made him pause. Her eyes were an unusual blue-green, the exact unusual shade as his own. Before he could process this coincidence, 2 more small figures appeared behind Lily, identical to her in every way. Triplets, all with the same sandy blonde hair and the same distinctive eyes. Emma, Grace, you too? Sarah sighed with affectionate exasperation. Mr. Donovan needs to make his call. The three girls stood in a row now, studying him with identical expressions of curiosity. Max found himself staring back, an uncomfortable sensation rising in his chest. The statistical improbability of three unrelated children sharing his exact eye color seemed significant, though he couldn't articulate why. His assistant's voicemail finally answered, breaking the moment. Max left a terse message about his situation and hung up. They looked like you, Sarah observed quietly, following his gaze to the triplets. Coincidence, Max replied automatically, though his analytical mind was already calculating the odds. Is he staying? One of the girls asked. Emma or Grace, he hadn't registered which was which. Just until the storm passes, Sarah assured them. Now back to bed, all of you. The girls retreated reluctantly, still watching Max with that unsettling directness. 9-year-old triplets must keep you busy, Max commented, surprising himself with the attempt at small talk. Sarah's expression softened. They're special girls. They've been with us almost 2 years now. She hesitated. Their mother was a former resident here herself, actually, Claire Bennett. She returned when she became ill, hoping we could help place the girls. The name meant nothing to Max, but he found himself asking, and their father? Unknown, according to Claire. She was very private about that part of her life. Sarah seemed to be studying his reaction. The girls have her surname. They've never known any father. Max nodded, relieved when Sarah changed the subject to practical matters of the guest room and breakfast times. The coincidence of the girls' appearance was just that, a coincidence. Genetics created such overlaps occasionally. His mind was making connections where none existed, a pattern recognition error. Yet, as Sarah led him upstairs to a modest guest room with a narrow bed and faded curtains, Max found himself thinking of those 3 identical faces with his eyes. Something primal and previously dormant stirred within him, a question he'd never thought to ask. Bathroom's down the hall, Sarah explained. I'll find you some dry clothes. My late husband was about your size. Thank you, Max replied, the words foreign on his tongue. In his world, gratitude was unnecessary. Services were expected and compensated. Left alone, Max set his briefcase on the bed and moved to the window. The storm continued unabated, rain streaming down the glass. Below, he could see the orphanage's modest grounds, a playground with aging equipment, a vegetable garden, and what looked like a small workshop. A life entirely different from his own. Children growing up without parents, without advantages, without the security he'd always taken for granted, despite his own emotional isolation, and 3 little girls with his eyes. Max pulled out his phone from habit, though he knew it had no signal. The screen illuminated, showing a missed calendar notification. Annual physical fertility specialist. He'd continued the appointments out of scientific curiosity, tracking his condition though he'd long accepted its permanence. The doctors. Words from his last visit surfaced in his memory. Your oligospermia diagnosis from 20 years ago would be evaluated differently with today's technology. The severe case they described should have progressed to a zoospermia by now, but your numbers have remained stable. It's possible the original diagnosis was overstated. Max had dismissed this as irrelevant. His marriage had ended. His life had taken shape around his condition, and he had no interest in revisiting old wounds. But now, standing in a children's home during a storm, facing 3 girls who carried his distinctive genetic markers, the implication of those words took on new significance. A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Sarah had returned with folded clothes and a towel. I've put fresh sheets on the bed, she said. The storm's supposed to pass by morning. The triplets, Max found himself asking. When were they born? Sarah blinked at the unexpected question. Let's see, there'll be 10 in January, January 15th. Max did the mental calculation automatically. 10 years ago would mean conception approximately April of that year, exactly when he and Catherine had been trying for a child, just before their fertility struggles were diagnosed. Their mother, he continued, unable to stop himself. Claire Bennett. What did she look like? Sarah's expression grew cautious. Blonde, like the girls. Petite. She was quite accomplished. A biochemist, actually. She worked for a pharmaceutical research company until her illness. A pharmaceutical research company. Max felt the floor shift beneath him. 10 years ago, he had participated in a pharmaceutical study at his doctor's recommendation, an experimental treatment for oligospermia. The company had been Goldman Pharmaceuticals. He'd never followed up on the results, as his marriage had dissolved shortly after. Mr. Donovan? Sarah was watching him with increasing concern. Are you all right? Fine, he managed, just tired. But as Sarah bid him good night and closed the door, Maxwell Donovan stood frozen, his carefully constructed world beginning to fracture around the edges. For the first time in decades, he faced a problem his analytical mind couldn't immediately solve, a pattern he couldn't predict, and a possibility that defied everything he believed about his life. Outside, the storm raged on, lightning occasionally illuminating the room. Max remained at the window, counting the seconds between flash and thunder as his father had taught him long ago. 1, 2, 3. Each count brought him closer to a truth he wasn't prepared to face, that the 3 little girls sleeping somewhere in this house might carry more than just his eyes. They might carry his DNA. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Sleep eluded. Maxwell Donovan. The narrow bed in the orphanage guest room was comfortable enough, but his mind refused to settle, racing through calculations and possibilities that had nothing to do with Quantum Horizon's latest acquisition. The storm had diminished to a gentle rainfall by dawn. Max rose early, his habitual 5 a.m. wake-up requiring no alarm. He dressed in the borrowed clothes, jeans and a flannel shirt that felt alien against his skin after years of tailored suits, and made his way downstairs. The orphanage was already stirring with activity. Children's voices echoed from different rooms, accompanied by the clatter of breakfast preparations from what he presumed was the kitchen. Following the sounds, Max found himself in a large dining area where several adults were setting tables while children in various stages of wakefulness shuffled in. Mr. Donovan, Sarah greeted him, emerging from the kitchen with a coffee pot. I hope you slept well despite the circumstances. Adequately, he replied, accepting the offered coffee with more gratitude than the word conveyed. I've contacted my assistant. A car will be here by 9. Sarah nodded, seemingly unsurprised by his eagerness to depart. You're welcome to join us for breakfast. Nothing fancy, just oatmeal and fruit, but it's nourishing. Before Max could craft a polite refusal, the triplets entered the dining room together, now dressed in mismatched but clean clothes. They spotted him immediately, and there was a brief whispered conference before they approached with synchronized determination. I'm Lily, said the one in the front, who seemed marginally more confident than her sisters. This is Emma, she pointed to the sister wearing glasses, and Grace, she indicated the third, who had her hair pulled back in a ponytail. Though identical in features, Max now noticed small differences in their expressions and mannerisms. Maxwell. Donovan, he responded formally, uncomfortable with the direct attention. Are you really staying for breakfast? Emma asked, adjusting her glasses. Max hesitated. His instinct was to retreat, to minimize contact until his car arrived, but something about their expectant faces made refusal difficult. Apparently so. The triplets exchanged glances. a silent communication system that seemed as effective as any corporate messaging platform. "You can sit with us," Grace offered quietly. "We eat at the blue table." Before Max could respond, a harried-looking young woman called from across the room. "Girls, time to help with the juice!" "That's Ms. Jenny," Lily explained. "She's nice, but gets stressed in the mornings." The triplets hurried off to help, leaving Max standing awkwardly with his coffee. Sarah, who had witnessed the exchange, gave him a thoughtful look. "They're not usually so forward with strangers," she commented. "Especially Grace. She's typically the shyest." Max took a careful sip of coffee. "Children often react to physical similarities. It's a basic recognition pattern." Sarah didn't argue, but her expression suggested she thought there was more to it. "The tow truck called. They've retrieved your car and taken it to Mitchell's garage in town. My brother runs it. He says there's significant damage to the electrical system from water infiltration." Max frowned. "How long for repairs?" "At least 3 days. They'll need to order parts." 3 days. Max processed this unwelcome development. "I'll have my assistant arrange for a car service from San Francisco." Sarah nodded. "Of course, though the roads east are still flooded from the storm. The highway department said it might be noon before the coastal route is passable." Max felt control of the situation slipping further away. Stranded in an orphanage, in borrowed clothes, with 3 little girls who shared his genetic markers staring at him from across the room. Nothing in his meticulously ordered life had prepared him for this scenario. "Mr. Donovan," called a small voice. One of the triplets, Emma, he recognized by the glasses, had returned. "Breakfast is ready if you want some." Max checked his watch reflexively, though he had nowhere to be. "Thank you." Breakfast at Harmony House proved to be a chaotic but surprisingly efficient operation. Children of various ages sat at color-coded tables, with the older ones helping the younger ones. The triplets' blue table held 6 children total, including them. Max found himself wedged between Lily and a boy of about 12 who introduced himself as Parker before returning to his oatmeal with single-minded focus. The simple meal was served family-style, with bowls passed around the table, an unfamiliar ritual to a man accustomed to solitary meals or formal business dinners. "Do you like oatmeal?" Grace asked from across the table, watching him carefully. "It's adequate nutrition," Max replied, then seeing her confusion added, "Yes, it's fine." "We have maple syrup on Fridays," Lily informed him. "Today is just brown sugar." "I see," Max said, unsure how to maintain conversation with children. In his experience, his employees' offspring were briefly presented at company picnics and then whisked away by their parents. Sustained interaction was uncharted territory. "What do you do?" Emma asked, her analytical gaze reminding Max uncomfortably of himself in board meetings. "I run a technology company," he simplified. "We develop artificial intelligence systems." "Like robots?" Lily asked, suddenly more interested. "Some applications involve robotics, yes. Primarily, we create learning algorithms that help computers make decisions like humans." Parker looked up from his oatmeal. "Like an Infiltrator 3, where the AI takes over the defense network." "That's fictional," Max replied. "Our systems have specific parameters and safety protocols. They're tools, not independent entities." He found himself explaining basic AI concepts to the increasingly interested children, automatically adjusting his language for their comprehension level. It was not unlike the presentations he gave to non-technical investors, though with considerably more interruptions and tangential questions. "So you're really smart," Lily concluded after his explanation of neural networks. "Intelligence is a multifaceted attribute," Max found himself saying. "Your brain develops different strengths based on experience and environment." Emma's eyes narrowed behind her glasses. "But some people are born smarter, right? It's in their genes." The question hit uncomfortably close to Max's swirling thoughts about genetic inheritance. There's evidence for heritable cognitive traits, yes, but environmental factors play a significant role in their expression. Ms. Sarah says we're all good at different things, Grace contributed quietly. I'm good at music. Emma's good at math. Lily's good at talking. Hey! Lily protested, though without real offense. The interaction gave Max an opening. You're in the same grade at school. 4th grade, Emma confirmed. But I do 5th grade math. The school lets us test into higher classes for subjects we're good at, Lily explained proudly. Emma's the smartest one. Lily's the bravest, Grace added loyally, and she can run the fastest. What about you? Max asked Grace directly, finding himself genuinely curious. I play piano, she said softly, and I remember things, like songs after hearing them once. Eidetic memory, Max thought, a trait that had served him well in business, allowing him to recall conversations and data without reference materials, another potential genetic connection. Breakfast concluded with announcements from Sarah about the day's schedule, which apparently included classes in the orphanage's small schoolroom due to transportation difficulties caused by the storm. As the children dispersed to their assigned chores, Sarah approached Max. Your car service called. The coastal road is indeed flooded. They've suggested a pickup time of 2 p.m. if conditions improve. Max nodded, mentally rearranging his schedule and calculating the impact of his absence on the Timmins negotiations. Is there somewhere I can set up to work remotely? I have my laptop. You can use my office, Sarah offered. It's not fancy, but the internet connection is decent. We had it upgraded for the children's online classes. As she led him back to the cluttered office from the previous night, Max found himself asking, the triplets, Emma, Grace, and Lily, they seem quite advanced for their age. Sarah glanced at him. They are, especially Emma. She has a remarkable aptitude for mathematics and logic. Grace has perfect pitch and can reproduce complex musical pieces after a single hearing. Lily's emotional intelligence is off the charts. She reads people better than most adults I know. Max processed this information, each girl showing exceptional ability in different domains, but all cognitively advanced. His own cognitive profile at their age had been similarly exceptional, leading to early advancement and eventually a full scholarship to MIT at 16. Their mother was brilliant, Sarah continued, watching him closely. Claire had a PhD in biochemistry by 28. She was working on cutting-edge pharmaceutical research before her diagnosis. What happened to her? Max found himself asking, though he could already guess, aggressive pancreatic cancer. By the time it was detected, it had already metastasized. She brought the girls here when she could no longer care for them and stayed in our hospice room until the end. Sarah's voice softened with remembered sorrow. She made me promise to keep them together. Triplets are almost impossible to place in a single home, but she was adamant. Max's analytical mind immediately calculated the financial and logistical challenges of raising 3 children simultaneously, a significant burden for most families, especially with exceptional children requiring additional educational resources. Have there been adoption inquiries? He asked, keeping his tone neutral. A few, Sarah admitted, but either the prospective parents only wanted one child, or they weren't equipped to handle the girls' advanced needs. And of course, the girls themselves have a say at their age. They've refused to be separated. They reached the office, and Sarah cleared space on the desk for his laptop. The Wi-Fi password is on the sticky note under the monitor. I'll be in the classroom if you need anything. Left alone, Max set up his workstation with habitual efficiency. His email had accumulated 47 new messages since last night, and the Timmins negotiation team had sent revised terms. Normally, such developments would command his complete attention. Instead, he found himself opening a browser window and typing Goldman Pharmaceuticals Clinical Trials 2013. Several results appeared, including an announcement of a study on oligospermia, treatments using a novel approach to sperm cell activation. The lead researcher was listed as Dr. Claire Bennett. Max stared at the name, pieces falling into place with mathematical precision. He had participated in that trial during the final months of his marriage, providing samples over a 6-week period. Catherine had already begun divorce proceedings by the time the study concluded, and he'd never followed up on the results. He searched for additional information on Dr. Claire Bennett and found her faculty profile from Stanford, including a professional photograph. A blonde woman with a serious expression looked back at him from the screen. While not immediately familiar, something about her features triggered a vague recognition. Perhaps they had interacted during the clinical trial. Max closed the browser and attempted to focus on the Timmons revisions, but for the first time in his professional life, he found his legendary concentration failing him. The implications of what he was discovering were too significant to compartmentalize. A soft knock at the door provided welcome interruption. It was Emma, holding a math workbook. "Miss Sarah said I could ask you a question if you're not too busy," she said hesitantly. "It's about geometric sequences." Max glanced at his unread emails, then back at the girl who might be his daughter. "I have a few minutes." Emma approached the desk and opened her workbook to a page of problems. "I understand the formula, but this one isn't working out right." Max examined the problem. It was indeed advanced for a 4th grader, the kind of mathematics he had gravitated toward at her age. "You've calculated correctly," he told her after a moment. "But there's a misprint in the problem statement. The common ratio should be 3, not 2. Emma's eyes widened as she reconsidered the problem. "That makes sense. Thank you." Instead of leaving, she studied him with uncommon intensity. "You figured that out really fast." "Pattern recognition," Max said simply. "A skill that can be developed with practice." "That's what I told Grace," Emma said, with the satisfied air of someone whose theory had been validated. "She remembers everything, but doesn't always see the patterns. Lily sees patterns, but not math ones." Again, that sense of the girls instinctively categorizing cognitive strengths and weaknesses, just as Max had done throughout his academic and professional life. Emma hesitated, then asked, "Are you really leaving today?" The question caught Max off guard. "Yes, once the roads are clear." Emma nodded, her expression carefully neutral in a way that struck Max as eerily familiar. It was the same face he presented to the board when concealing disappointment. "Thank you for helping with my math," she said formally, closing her workbook. As she turned to leave, Max found himself saying, "Emma, would you and your sisters be interested in seeing some real AI applications? I have a demo program on my laptop." The transformation in her expression was immediate, cautious interest blooming into barely contained excitement. "Really? Can I get Lily and Grace?" Max nodded, experiencing an unfamiliar sensation as he watched her hurry away. It took him a moment to identify it as anticipation, not for a business outcome or strategic advantage, but for the simple act of showing something interesting to children who might appreciate it, children who might be his. "This is Aurora," Max explained, as the 3 triplets crowded around his laptop. "She's an adaptive learning algorithm we developed at Quantum Horizon." On the screen, a visualization of the AI system pulsed with gentle blue light, responding to voice commands. The girls watched in fascination as Max demonstrated how Aurora could process natural language and solve increasingly complex problems. "Can she understand us too?" Lily asked, leaning closer to the screen. "Try it," Max encouraged, surprising himself with his patience. In the corporate world, he rarely conducted demonstrations personally anymore. Lily cleared her throat importantly. "Hello, Aurora. My name is Lily Bennett." "Hello, Lily Bennett," The system responded in its pleasant voice. "How may I assist you today? What's the hardest math problem you can solve?" Emma interjected, her academic interests immediately evident. Aurora pulsed thoughtfully. "I can solve differential equations, perform multivariable calculus, and work with complex number theory. Would you like me to demonstrate?" Emma's eyes widened behind her glasses. "Yes, please." Grace, who had been quietly observing, asked, "Can you create music?" "I can compose simple melodies based on mathematical patterns and existing musical styles," Aurora replied. "Would you like me to compose something for you, Grace?" "She knows my name," Grace whispered, delighted. "She's analyzing voice patterns and facial recognition," Max explained. "The system is learning to distinguish between you, though identical triplets present an interesting challenge for the algorithm." For the next 20 minutes, Max found himself guiding the girls through various applications of the AI system, explaining concepts he'd discussed only with doctoral-level engineers in the past. To his surprise, the triplets grasped the fundamental principles quickly, asking insightful questions that occasionally made him reconsider his own assumptions. "So, Aurora keeps getting smarter the more she talks to people?" Lily asked. "Essentially, yes. She identifies patterns in human communication and problem-solving, then incorporates those patterns into her own processing framework. Like how we learn from Ms. Sarah and our teachers," Emma reasoned. "Similar in concept, though human learning is far more complex and integrates emotional and social components that we're still working to replicate in AI systems." Grace, who had been quietly listening, suddenly asked, "Is Aurora ever sad?" The Sargish question caught Max off guard. Aurora doesn't experience emotions the way humans do. She can recognize and respond to human emotions, but doesn't feel them herself. That's sad, Grace decided. Music isn't just patterns, it's feelings too. Max found himself considering this perspective, one that rarely emerged in technical discussions of AI development. That's an interesting observation. Some researchers are exploring ways to integrate emotional intelligence into AI systems, though it's challenging to replicate something we don't fully understand ourselves. "Like how people can be sad but pretend they're not?" Lily asked with uncomfortable perceptiveness. Before Max could formulate a response, Sarah appeared in the doorway. "There you are. Girls, it's time for your language arts class with Miss Jenny." The triplets reluctantly said goodbye to Aurora and thanked Max with a synchronization that remained disconcerting. As they filed out, Emma paused. "Will Aurora remember us if we talk to her again?" she asked. "Yes," Max confirmed. "She'll retain your voice patterns and interaction history." Emma nodded, seemingly satisfied before following her sisters. The question lingered in Max's mind after she left. Would there be another conversation? His car service was scheduled to arrive in just a few hours. Sarah remained in the doorway, watching him with that same thoughtful expression. "You're very good with them. Patient. Most adults get overwhelmed by their questions." Max closed the Aurora program. "They ask intelligent questions. That's rare at any age." "They're extraordinary children," Sarah agreed. "Their mother was the same way, brilliant but humble about it. She could explain complex scientific concepts so anyone could understand." She hesitated. "Mr. Donovan, I hope you don't mind my asking, but is there a reason you seem so interested in the girls?" The direct question demanded a direct answer. Max considered his options, then decided on a calculated partial truth. "I believe I may have known their mother professionally. I participated in a clinical trial at Goldman Pharmaceuticals around the time the girls would have been conceived." Dr. Bennett was the lead researcher. Sarah's expression shifted from curiosity to surprise. "I see," she said carefully. "That's quite a coincidence." "Indeed," Max agreed. "Statistical improbabilities fascinate me." Before Sarah could respond, her phone rang. She excused herself to answer it, leaving Max alone with his thoughts and the growing certainty that the triplets' existence was far more than coincidence. He returned to his laptop, opening a private browser window to continue his research into Goldman Pharmaceuticals. The fertility study had been published in a medical journal, with Claire Bennett listed as the primary investigator. The methodology section mentioned a novel technique for activating dormant sperm cells through a proprietary chemical process. What it didn't mention was whether any of the donated specimens had been used for purposes beyond the stated research objectives. The possibility that his genetic material had been used without his knowledge, perhaps by the researcher herself, was both disturbing and strangely compelling. Max checked his watch. The car service would arrive in approximately 3 hours, sufficient time to gather more data before making his departure. He found Sarah in the small kitchen, preparing lunch with another staff member. "Ms. Mitchell, I'd like to ask about the girls' birth certificates. Are they public record?" Sarah glanced at her colleague, who tactfully moved to another task out of earshot. "They are, though I admit your question seems unusual. May I ask why? You're interested?" "Professional curiosity," Max replied smoothly. "The statistical anomaly of identical triplets with such advanced cognitive profiles is significant. I'm considering a donation to your facility for their educational needs." It wasn't entirely a lie. The thought had already formed in his analytical mind. Regardless of biological connection, these children deserved educational opportunities commensurate with their abilities. Sarah seemed to accept this explanation. "Their birth certificates are in the county records office in town. Claire is listed as the mother, but there's no father named." "I see. And Harmony House has legal guardianship now?" "Yes, since Claire's passing 2 years ago. We're their legal guardians until adoption, though finding a home willing to take 3 high-needs children remains challenging." Max processed this information. "The county records office. Is it open today?" "Should be, until 4. It's on Main Street across from the courthouse." Sarah studied him with renewed curiosity. "The car service could drop you there before heading back to San Francisco if you're truly interested." "Perhaps I will," Max said non-committally. "Thank you for the information." Returning to Sarah's office, Max made a call to his personal lawyer in San Francisco, requesting a discreet investigation into Goldman Pharmaceuticals' clinical trial procedures and participants' rights. Then he contacted his assistant to modify his car service instructions to include a stop at the Cypress Cove County Records Office. As he worked through the remaining Timmons acquisition documents, Max found his thoughts repeatedly returning to the triplets. Their exceptional abilities, distinctive eye color, and the timing of their birth all suggested a biological connection that he couldn't dismiss as mere coincidence. A soft knock interrupted his concentration. It was Grace, the quietest of the triplets, holding a piece of paper. "I thought you might like this," she said hesitantly, extending the paper toward him. It was a drawing, impressive for a 9-year-old, of Aurora's visual interface, the pulsing blue patterns captured with remarkable accuracy. "You remembered." "The exact pattern," Max observed. Grace nodded. "I remember most things I see. Emma says it's called eidetic memory." "That's correct," Max confirmed, recalling his own similar ability that had served him well throughout his academic and professional life. "It's an uncommon trait." "Do you have it too?" Grace asked perceptively. Max considered the question. "Yes, though I haven't discussed it much. It's simply how my mind works." "Mine too," Grace said with a small smile, the first he'd seen from her. "People think it's weird sometimes." "It's not weird," Max found himself saying firmly. "It's an evolutionary advantage. A different way of processing information that allows for more detailed recall and analysis." Grace's expression brightened at this description. That's what Emma said. She says my brain is just using a different algorithm. Max felt an unexpected surge of pride at Emma's scientific explanation. Your sister has a good understanding of cognitive processes. She's the smart one, Grace said matter-of-factly. Lily's the brave one. I'm just the quiet one. Intelligence manifests in many forms, Max replied, echoing his earlier conversation with the girls. Musical intelligence and memory are equally valuable cognitive traits. Grace considered this. Mom used to say that too, that we each got different pieces of the same puzzle. The casual mention of their mother created an opening. You remember your mother well? Grace nodded solemnly. I remember everything about her, the way she smelled like vanilla and coffee, how she hummed when she was thinking, the stories she told about her research. What did she tell you about her research? Max asked carefully. That she was helping people have babies when they couldn't make them the regular way. She said it was like solving puzzles with DNA. Grace tilted her head, studying him. Your eyes are exactly like ours. Emma noticed it first. The direct observation, delivered with a child's bluntness, momentarily startled Max. Genetic traits can appear in unrelated individuals. Blue-green eyes occur in approximately 3% of the population. Grace accepted this explanation with a nod, though her expression suggested she wasn't entirely convinced. Ms. Sarah says lunch is in 30 minutes. We're having vegetable soup. Thank you for the information, Max replied formally, then added, and for the drawing, it's very accurate. Grace smiled again, more confidently this time, before leaving him to his thoughts. Max studied the drawing, noting the precision with which Grace had captured Aurora's interface. Most adults couldn't have reproduced it with such accuracy after such brief exposure. Combined with her musical abilities, it suggested exceptional right-brain development alongside the logical capabilities demonstrated by Emma and the emotional intelligence shown by Lily. His phone chimed with a message from his driver. Road conditions had improved, and he would arrive at Harmony House by 1:30 p.m. Max acknowledged the update, then made another call, this time to Dr. Alan Foster, his personal physician. Max, this is unexpected, Dr. Foster answered. Your annual physical isn't for another month. I need information about a previous condition, Max said without preamble. My oligospermia diagnosis from 20 years ago. You mentioned it might have been overstated. Yes, based on your recent tests. Your sperm count is low, but not as severely reduced as your original diagnosis suggested. Why the sudden interest? Are you reconsidering options for biological children? Max chose his words carefully. I'm investigating a situation that may involve my genetic material from a study I participated in at Goldman Pharmaceuticals approximately 10 years ago. There was a pause on the other end. Max, are you suggesting unauthorized use of your specimens? I'm gathering data before drawing conclusions. What would be the most definitive way to establish paternity in the case of identical triplets? Another, longer pause. Identical triplets would share the same DNA profile, a standard paternity test comparing your DNA with any of the children would establish biological relationship. Are you saying you might have unknown children, Max? It's a statistical possibility I'm exploring, Max replied, already calculating his next steps. Thank you for the information, Alan. I'll be in touch. As he ended the call, Max stood and moved to the window overlooking the orphanage grounds. In the playground area, he could see the triplets during their recess period. Emma was reading under a tree, while Lily organized some kind of game with other children. Grace sat at a worn piano on the covered porch, her fingers moving over the keys with evident skill, despite the instrument's visible state of disrepair. 3 extraordinary girls, genetically identical yet distinctly individual, each displaying cognitive traits that mirrored his own. The mathematical probability that they were his biological daughters increased with each new piece of information. The question that remained was what, if anything, he intended to do about it. The Cypress. Cove County Records Office occupied the first floor of a modest brick building that had likely stood since the town's founding a century ago. Max, now back in his own slightly rumpled suit, approached the front desk where an elderly woman peered at him over reading glasses. "How can I help you, young man?" she asked, her tone suggesting that anyone under 60 qualified as young in her estimation. "I need to view birth certificates from approximately 10 years ago," Max stated, his usual authoritative tone automatically engaging. The woman, her nameplate identified her as Gladys Perkins, seemed unimpressed. "You'll need to fill out a records request form and provide identification. Are you a relative of the individuals?" Max produced his driver's license. "I'm researching a potential biological connection. The birth certificates for Emma, Lily, and Grace Bennett, born January 15th, approximately 10 years ago." Gladys raised an eyebrow. "The Harmony House triplets. Everybody knows those girls." Her expression softened slightly. "Such a tragedy about their mother. Brilliant woman, Dr. Bennett. She tutored my grandson in chemistry during her illness. Wouldn't take a dime for it either." Max filed away this additional information about Claire Bennett's character as Gladys handed him a form to complete. "Fill this out. I'll see what we have on file." While waiting, Max reviewed his strategy. Confirming his name wasn't on the birth certificates would be expected. If Claire Bennett had used his genetic material without his knowledge, she wouldn't have listed him as the father. But the certificates might contain other useful information, precise birth timing, any medical notes, perhaps even details about the circumstances of conception. "Here we are," Gladys announced, returning with a folder. "I'll need to stay with you while you review these. Standard procedure for vital records." Max nodded, accepting the folder with outward calm, despite the significance of what it might contain. Inside were 3 nearly identical birth certificates, differing only in the names: Emma Elizabeth Bennett, Lily Marie Bennett, and Grace Ann Bennett, and the sequence of their births separated by minutes. His eyes scanned for critical information. Mother's name, Claire Josephine Bennett. Father's name, a blank space marked "not listed." The location of birth was Cypress Cove Community Hospital. Their birth weights were notably similar, all within an ounce of each other, and slightly above average for triplets. What caught Max's attention was a small notation in the additional information section of each certificate. "Conceived via ART, assisted reproductive technology." This confirmed his theory that Claire had used medical intervention to become pregnant, though it didn't specify what form that intervention had taken. "Did you find what you were looking for?" Gladys asked, studying his reaction. "Partially," Max replied. "Would there be any additional medical records associated with these births, specifically regarding the assisted reproductive technology noted here?" Gladys shook her head. "Birth certificates only contain basic information. Detailed medical records would be at the hospital, and those would require proper authorization or a court order to access." She peered at him more intently. "If you don't mind my asking, what's your interest in the Bennett girls?" The direct question required a measured response. "I believe I may have a biological connection to them. I'm gathering information before proceeding further." Understanding dawned in Gladys's expression. "You think you might be their father?" It wasn't a question. "Those girls have been waiting for someone to claim them since Claire passed. Sarah Mitchell does her best, but those children need a family." Max neither confirmed nor denied her assumption. "Thank you for your assistance, Mrs. Perkins. Is there a copy service available?" After obtaining certified copies of the birth certificates, Max stepped outside to find his driver waiting patiently beside the black Suburban sent from San Francisco. The rain had stopped, though grey clouds still hung low over the small coastal town. "To the orphanage, to collect your belongings, Mr. Donovan," the driver asked, opening the door. Max checked his watch. It was just after 3 p.m. If they left immediately, he could be back in San Francisco by 5, in time for an important conference call with Tokyo. "Yes," he confirmed, his mind already formulating the questions he would need to resolve before taking any definitive action regarding the triplets. At Harmony House, Max found the atmosphere had changed since morning. The children were engaged in various afternoon activities, some doing homework in the dining area, others working on art projects or playing board games. The organized chaos felt less jarring than it had upon his arrival, though no less foreign to his orderly existence. Sarah met him in the entryway. "Your timing is perfect. The girls just finished their math lesson and were asking about you." Before Max could respond, the triplets appeared from the direction of the classroom, their expressions brightening simultaneously upon seeing him. "You didn't leave yet," Lily exclaimed, her characteristic directness on display. "I had an errand in town," Max explained, conscious of Sarah watching the interaction closely. "I've come to collect my things before departing." The girls' faces fell in synchronized disappointment. Emma, ever practical, recovered first. "Will Aurora remember us if you take her away?" The question carried implications beyond the AI system's memory functions. "Aurora's data is cloud-based," Max found himself explaining. "Her interactions with you are stored regardless of which device accesses her interface." "So she won't forget us," Grace confirmed quietly. "No," Max agreed. "She won't forget," Sarah cleared her throat gently. "Girls, why don't you help Mr. Donovan gather his things? Then you can say a proper goodbye." As they climbed the stairs to the guest room, Lily took the conversational lead as usual. "Did you fix your car?" "It's being repaired. Another vehicle has been sent for me." "From San Francisco?" Emma asked. "That's a long way to send a car." "Distance is relative when necessity dictates," Max replied. Then, noting their confusion, added, "Yes, it's a long way, but I have important work to return to." In the guest room, Max gathered his laptop and briefcase, now dry and containing the birth certificate copies. The borrowed clothes had been laundered and folded neatly on the bed. He changed back into his own shirt, but kept the borrowed jacket, as his suit jacket was still damp from the previous night's storm. "What kind of work do you do that's so important?" Lily asked, perched on the edge of the bed while her sisters stood nearby. Max considered simplifying, but opted for accuracy. "I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Quantum Horizon. We develop artificial intelligence systems like Aurora for various applications, medical diagnostics, climate modeling, financial analysis." "CEO," Emma repeated, clearly familiar with the term. "That means you're the boss of the whole company." "Essentially, yes. Is it a big company?" Lily pressed. "Substantial. We employ approximately 12,000 people globally." The girls exchanged their typical silent communication glance. "That's why you have to go back," Grace concluded softly. "All those people need you." The simple statement carried an unexpected weight. Max had never framed his responsibilities in quite those terms. 12,000 employees, whose livelihoods depended, at least in part, on his strategic decisions. It was factually accurate yet emotionally resonant in a way his typical, metrics-driven thinking rarely captured. "Yes," he acknowledged. "That's part of why I need to return." As they made their way back downstairs, Max found himself walking more slowly than his usual efficient pace. The triplets matched his stride, seemingly reluctant to reach the front door and the inevitable departure it represented. Sarah and several other staff members had gathered to say goodbye, a courtesy that struck Max as unnecessary but not unwelcome. He thanked them formally for their hospitality, promised to arrange for his borrowed clothes to be returned, and then faced the expectant triplets. It was educational meeting you, he told them, falling back on formal language in the face of unexpected emotion. Will you come back sometime? Lily asked directly. Maybe when your car is fixed. The question presented a decision point Max had been contemplating since his visit to the records office. His preliminary investigation suggested a strong possibility of biological connection to these children. Ethical and legal considerations aside, his scientific mind insisted on certainty before proceeding further. I may return to check on my vehicle's repairs, he answered, a diplomatic response that wasn't quite a promise. Emma studied him with analytical precision. That's not a yes or no answer. Correct, Max acknowledged, respecting her observation. It's a statement of possibility pending future circumstances. We understand probability, Emma informed him seriously. A maybe from adults usually means no. Max found himself unexpectedly cornered by her logical assessment. In this case, it's a genuine conditional statement. There are variables to be resolved. Sarah intervened gently. Girls, Mr. Donovan has been very generous with his time. We should let him get back to his important work in San Francisco. The triplets nodded with reluctant acceptance. To Max's surprise, Grace stepped forward first, offering a small, folded paper. It's my phone number, she explained quietly, in case Aurora wants to talk to us again. Max accepted the paper, tucking it carefully into his pocket. Thank you, Grace. His driver appeared at the door. Mr. Donovan, we should depart. If you wish to reach San Francisco by 5. With final goodbyes exchanged, Max followed the driver to the waiting Suburban. As they pulled away from Harmony House, he found himself looking back at the weathered Victorian building where 3 identical faces watched from the porch steps. Cute kids, the driver commented, catching Max's backward glance in the rear view mirror. Relatives of yours? The question hung in the air for a moment before Max responded. It's a statistical possibility I'm currently evaluating. The driver looked confused but didn't pursue the conversation further. As they merged onto the coastal highway, Max opened his laptop and placed a call to Walter Simmons, his chief legal counsel. The older attorney answered immediately. Max, the board's been asking about your absence. The Timmons negotiation. That's not why I'm calling, Walter, Max interrupted. I need information on legal precedents involving unauthorized use of genetic material, specifically sperm donation for clinical trials. A pause. That's unexpected. May I ask why? I participated in a fertility study at Goldman Pharmaceuticals a decade ago. I have reason to believe my genetic material may have been used to conceive children without my knowledge or consent. Good. Odd, Walter breathed. You've discovered these children? 3 identical girls, aged 9, with distinctive genetic markers matching my own. I've obtained their birth certificates, which confirm they were conceived through assisted reproductive technology. Their mother was the lead researcher on the study. Walter's legal mind engaged immediately. The implications are significant, both personally and potentially for the company. Have you confirmed paternity? Not definitively. That's my next step. I strongly advise discretion, Max. If this becomes public before we understand the full legal landscape, I'm aware of the potential complications, Max cut in. Prepare a comprehensive brief on my rights and responsibilities in this scenario. Also, I want a complete investigation into Goldman Pharmaceuticals' protocols and any potential violations. Of course, and Max, the personal aspect of this, how are you processing that? The question was uncharacteristically personal, coming from Walter, who typically maintained strict professional boundaries. Max stared out the window at the passing coastline, considering his response. I'm approaching it methodically, he finally answered, gathering data, analyzing variables, considering outcomes. Some situations can't be reduced to algorithms, Walter noted gently. Children least of all. Max didn't respond immediately. his mind returning to the image of three identical faces with his eyes watching him drive away. Emma's analytical precision, Grace's quiet perceptiveness, Lily's confident directness, distinct personalities emerging from identical genetic material. A fascinating developmental case study, certainly, but somehow more than that. "I'll be in the office tomorrow morning," Max said, redirecting to familiar professional territory. "Have the legal brief on my desk by 9. As the call ended, Max removed the folded paper from his pocket, Grace's phone number, written in careful childish handwriting. Below it she had added Emma and Lily too, and drawn 3 small identical stick figures holding hands. Max studied the drawing, its simplicity conveying something his sophisticated AI systems still couldn't fully capture: human connection. For a man who had built his empire on patterns and predictions, the triplets presented a variable he had never accounted for in his life's equation. The Suburban continued north toward San Francisco, carrying him back to the ordered, controlled world he had created. But for the first time in years, Maxwell Donovan was uncertain about what awaited him at the journey's end. The Quantum Horizon headquarters dominated the San Francisco skyline, 65 stories of glass and steel reflecting the morning light. Max strode through the lobby with his characteristic efficiency, employees parting before him like water around a stone. His return after a 2-day absence had created a ripple of activity throughout the building. Calendar invitations, meeting, requests and project updates flooding his inbox since his car had crossed the Golden Gate Bridge the previous evening. "Welcome back, Mr. Donovan." His executive assistant, Vanessa Carter, greeted him as he entered the executive suite. "The board has called an emergency meeting for 10 o'clock. I've adjusted your schedule accordingly." Max nodded, accepting the tablet she handed him with the day's revised agenda. "The legal brief from Walter? On your desk with your morning reports. Also, there's been a development with the Timmons acquisition. Their CEO is expressing concerns about the delay in communication." "I'll address it," Max replied, moving toward his office. "Hold my calls for the next hour, except for Dr. Foster or Walter." His office, a minimalist expanse of glass, steel and carbon fiber, represented the aesthetic he'd cultivated throughout Quantum Horizon. Clean, functional, uncompromising. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered the same commanding view of the city he'd observed the night before the storm, yet somehow the perspective felt different now. Walter's legal brief sat centered on his desk in a sealed folder marked "Confidential." Max activated the privacy glass before opening it, transforming the transparent walls to an opaque white that signaled absolute non-interruption to his staff. The document was comprehensive, as expected from Walter. 20 pages detailing legal precedents for cases involving unauthorized use of genetic material, the complexities of parental rights in artificial insemination scenarios, and the potential corporate implications should the situation become public. Key passages had been highlighted for his attention. The unauthorized use of donated genetic material for purposes beyond those explicitly consented to constitutes a serious ethical breach and potentially actionable offense under current California law. Should paternity be established, you would have legal grounds to pursue custody or, at minimum, visitation rights. However, the unusual circumstances and duration of separation might complicate standard family court proceedings. From a corporate governance perspective, the sudden discovery of biological heirs could trigger mandatory disclosures to the board and potentially shareholders, particularly given your controlling interest in Quantum Horizon, 37.8%, and no existing succession planning involving heirs. Max processed the information methodically, weighing legal, financial, and personal considerations. His phone chimed with a message from Dr. Foster. "Lab ready when you are. Confidentiality protocols in place as requested." A knock at his door interrupted his analysis. Max deactivated the privacy glass to find Sofia Rivera waiting, her expression a mixture of concern and irritation. "The Tokyo deal is destabilizing," she said without preamble as he gestured her in. "They're questioning our commitment after you missed yesterday's call. The board is concerned, Max. This isn't like you." "A mechanical failure and weather conditions delayed my return," Max stated, offering the facts without elaboration. "The situation has been resolved." Sophia studied him with the perceptiveness that made her valuable as COO. "Something's different. You've never missed a major negotiation in 15 years, not even when you had pneumonia and called in from the hospital. The circumstances were unexpected. That's what concerns me," Sophia pressed. "You don't do unexpected, Max. You plan for contingencies most people couldn't even imagine." She hesitated, then added, "There are rumors about where you were." Max raised an eyebrow. "Explain." "Your driver mentioned dropping you at a county records office in some coastal town, then picking you up at a children's home. People are talking." The information leak was unexpected, but not entirely surprising. Max made a mental note to address the breach in confidentiality protocols among the transportation staff. "My whereabouts during the delay are irrelevant to our operational concerns," he stated. "The Tokyo negotiation can be salvaged. I'll conduct the call personally this evening to accommodate their time zone." Sophia seemed unconvinced. "Max, if there's something happening that could impact Quantum, I need to know. The board meeting in an hour isn't just about Tokyo." "Harrison Brooks is using this as an opportunity to question your focus." Harrison Brooks, the ambitious head of their AI ethics division, had made no secret of his belief that Quantum Horizon needed more humanized leadership. The irony that Brooks might use Max's first genuine human complication as ammunition wasn't lost on him. "I'll address the board's concerns directly," Max assured her. "Now I need 30 minutes to prepare." After Sophia left, Max turned to the window, his reflection superimposed over the city below. The face looking back at him carried the same distinctive blue-green eyes he'd seen repeated in triplet on 3 small faces at Harmony House. Eyes that had watched him drive away with expressions of disappointment he couldn't seem to dismiss. From his thoughts, his phone chimed again, another message from his personal physician. "Preliminary comparison of phenotypic markers strongly suggests genetic relationship. Need DNA confirmation for certainty." Max made a decision. He pressed the intercom. "Vanessa, arrange for a quantum courier to retrieve a package from Cypress Cove. I'll provide the details." "Yes, Mr. Donovan. Regarding the board meeting, I'll be ready," he assured her, already drafting a message to Sarah Mitchell at Harmony House. The Quantum Horizon boardroom occupied the top floor of the building, its curved glass wall offering a panoramic view of the bay. 12 board members were already seated when Max entered precisely at 10 o'clock, their expressions ranging from concern to barely concealed hostility. Lawrence Turner, the board chairman and one of Quantum's earliest investors, called the meeting to order. "Max, thank you for joining us despite your eventful week. We've asked for this emergency session to address concerns about the Timmons acquisition and more broadly about recent leadership decisions." Max took his seat at the head of the table, his posture betraying none of the complex calculations running through his mind. "The Timmons acquisition remains on schedule. Yesterday's communication delay was unfortunate, but not material to the overall timeline." "It's not just yesterday," Harrison Brooks interjected from across the table. "There's been a pattern of distraction over the past quarter. The Baker integration fell behind. The Singapore expansion was delayed. Now Timmons is expressing doubts about our commitment." Max regarded Brooks impassively. At 38, the man represented the new guard of tech leadership. Polished, mediagenic, with carefully cultivated humanist credentials that played well in the press. His position heading AI ethics had been a concession to public concerns about quantum's rapid growth in sensitive sectors. The Baker integration was deliberately slowed to address security vulnerabilities identified during due diligence. Maxi responded. The Singapore expansion awaited regulatory clearance that we received last week. As for Timmins, I've scheduled a personal call with CEO Landry tonight to address any concerns. The issue isn't just operational delays, Brooks persisted. It's about leadership stability and corporate image. In today's market, a CEO who disappears for days without explanation creates vulnerability. Several board members nodded in agreement. Max noted the alliances forming around the table, a shift in the power dynamics he'd taken for granted for years. I was delayed by mechanical failure and weather, Max stated evenly. During that time, I remotely addressed critical decisions and delegated appropriately. The protocols we established for such contingencies functioned as designed. Lawrence. Turner leaned forward. Max, speaking frankly, there's concern about your personal investment in Quantum's future. You've rejected our suggestions for succession planning. You haven't cultivated a clear second-in-command. The company remains extraordinarily dependent on your personal direction, which has resulted in 42% average annual growth for the past decade, Max pointed out. No one questions your strategic brilliance, Turner acknowledged. The concern is about sustainability and stability. You've built a company valued at over $800 billion, yet its future remains tied to a single individual, with no apparent personal attachments or legacy considerations. The observation struck closer to home than Turner could have realized. Max's phone vibrated in his pocket, likely the confirmation from Sarah that the courier had retrieved the DNA samples he'd requested, the triplet's genetic material, to be compared against his own to determine if they were indeed his biological daughters. I understand the board's concerns, Max said, shifting his approach. You raise valid points about succession planning and leadership distribution. I propose we table this discussion until next week's regular session, at which time I'll present a comprehensive framework addressing these issues. The suggestion created a ripple of surprise around the table. Max rarely deferred board concerns or invited future scrutiny. That would be welcome, Turner said cautiously. In the meantime, what's your plan for stabilizing the Timmins situation? Max outlined a three-point strategy for reassuring the Timmins leadership team, demonstrating his characteristic command of the details. As the discussion turned to operational matters, he noted that Brooks appeared frustrated by the shift away from leadership concerns. After the meeting concluded, Walter Simmons caught up with him in the hallway. A week to prepare a succession framework. That's an ambitious timeline, even for you. Circumstances have evolved, Max replied quietly. I need to see you in my office. Behind closed doors, Max shared the developments with his legal counsel. The DNA samples will arrive this afternoon. Dr. Foster will process them immediately with full confidentiality protocols. Walter absorbed this information with the measured calm of a seasoned attorney. And if paternity is confirmed, then I'll need to expand the legal framework to address custody options, financial provisions, and integration considerations. Integration? Walter repeated. You're considering bringing them into your life. Max, that's a monumental change, personally and professionally. I'm aware, Max acknowledged, hence the need for comprehensive scenario planning. Walter studied him with the insight gained from 20 years as his legal advisor. This isn't just about legal obligation or corporate responsibility for you, is it? Max considered the question. The logical, data-driven approach that had guided his entire adult life suggested maintaining distance. Financial support, perhaps, but minimal personal involvement to reduce disruption to his carefully constructed existence. Yet he found himself remembering distinct moments from his brief time at Harmony House. Emma's analytical questions about Aurora's learning algorithms, Grace's perfect reproduction of the interface design, Lily's perceptive observation about people pretending not to be sad. 3 different manifestations of intelligence he recognized in himself, expressed through personalities as distinct as their identical faces were similar. The variables are complex, he finally answered. I'm still processing the optimal approach. Walter smiled slightly. Some might call that a very technical way of saying you have feelings about these children. Max didn't confirm or deny the observation. I need options prepared for all potential scenarios, Walter. Full legal custody, shared arrangements, visitation frameworks, educational trusts, everything. And the board? Walter pressed. Brooks clearly senses an opportunity in your distraction. If paternity is confirmed and you pursue custody, disclosure becomes inevitable. I'm developing a strategic approach, Max assured him. The succession framework I promised isn't a delaying tactic. It's a necessary evolution regardless of the paternity outcome. After Walter left, Max turned to his computer and opened a secure browser window. He typed parenting identical triplets into the search bar. The first time in his adult life he had researched anything related to child rearing. The search returned thousands of results: medical studies on multiple birth development, parenting, blogs with practical advice, academic papers on identical siblings' psychological differentiation. Max approached the information as he would any new technological domain, systematically, thoroughly, identifying key principles and best practices. Yet, as he read a first-hand account from a father of identical triplet girls, something shifted in his analytical approach. The writer described the moment he realized each child, though genetically identical, experienced the world differently, one through music, one through words, one through physical movement. Max thought of Emma, Grace, and Lily, their distinct manifestations of intelligence, their different approaches to the same problems, their unified determination to remain together, despite the statistical improbability of adoption as a trio. His phone chimed with an incoming message from Dr. Foster. Samples received. Analysis underway. Preliminary results within 24 hours. 24 hours, until empirical confirmation of what Max already suspected with increasing certainty. 24 hours to prepare for a decision that would alter the trajectory of multiple lives, including his own. He opened the small drawer in his desk where he'd placed Grace's folded note with the 3 small stick figures holding hands. The simple drawing represented a variable his algorithms had never accounted for. The possibility of connection beyond calculation, of legacy beyond corporate assets. For a man who had built his entire existence around prediction and control, the uncertainty should have been destabilizing. Instead, Max found himself experiencing an unfamiliar sensation as he contemplated the unknown ahead. It felt remarkably like anticipation. The results are conclusive, Max, Dr. Foster said, sliding the report across his desk. 99.99998% probability of paternity. There's no question the Bennett triplets are your biological daughters. Max studied the DNA analysis with the same intensity he applied to quarterly earnings reports. The scientific confirmation of what he had already deduced transformed theoretical possibility into undeniable reality. He had 3 daughters. 3 genetically identical 9-year-old girls who had been living in an orphanage for the past 2 years. The samples were collected non-invasively, Max confirmed, his mind immediately concerned with the children's well-being. Dr. Foster nodded. As requested, Sarah Mitchell cooperated fully. The girls provided cheek swabs, believing it was for a routine health screening at the orphanage. The necessary deception troubled Max, though he recognized its temporary utility. And the confidentiality. In protocols? Absolute. I processed everything personally with no digital record. This report is the only documentation, and it exists solely in physical form. Dr. Foster leaned forward, his expression shifting from clinical to concerned. Max, speaking not as your doctor but as someone who's known you for 15 years, what do you intend to do with this information? It was the question Max had been calculating since leaving Harmony House, a complex equation with variables he'd never before included in his decision matrices. I'm exploring multiple approaches, he replied carefully. Dr. Foster smiled slightly. That's very you. But these aren't quarterly projections or product launch scenarios. They're children who need stability and commitment. I'm aware of the distinction, Max said, tucking the report into his briefcase. Thank you for your discretion, Alan. Back at Quantum Horizon, Max found Sophia waiting in his office, reviewing documents on her tablet. She looked up as he entered, her expression concerned. The Tokyo call is scheduled for 9 p.m., she reported. Landry from Timmins is satisfied with the concessions we've offered. The board seems temporarily placated, though Harrison is still making noise in private conversations. She paused, studying him. But that's not what's on your mind, is it? Max had worked with Sophia for over a decade. Her analytical skills rivaled his own, complemented by an emotional intelligence he sometimes lacked. If anyone in his corporate sphere would understand the situation, it would be her. I need your perspective on something, he said, activating the privacy glass. Something unrelated to Quantum's operations, yet potentially impacting my leadership capacity. Sophia set down her tablet, giving him her full attention. That sounds serious. I've recently confirmed that I have 3 biological daughters, identical triplets, age 9. Their mother is deceased. They currently reside at a children's home in Cypress Cove. To her credit, Sophia's expression registered surprise for only a moment before shifting to careful analysis. The place your car broke down, correct. Their mother was Claire Bennett, a biochemist who led a fertility study I participated in a decade ago. It appears she used my genetic material without authorization to conceive the children. And you had no knowledge of their existence until now, Sophia concluded. None. The timing coincided with my incorrect diagnosis of severe oligospermia and my divorce from Catherine. Sophia absorbed this information, her mind visibly working through implications. What are your intentions regarding these children? The directness of the question matched Max's own thought process. I'm developing options. Financial support is the minimum ethical response. Full custody would represent a significant life. Restructuring, for both you and them, Sophia noted, and for Quantum, potentially. The board's concerns about succession planning and your personal investment in the company's future would certainly be addressed by the existence of heirs, but the immediate disruption to your leadership capacity during transition could be substantial. Max appreciated her ability to analyze both personal and corporate dimensions, which is why I'm seeking your assessment. You understand the company's operations and my role within it better than anyone. Sophia considered carefully before responding. Professionally speaking, Quantum has become too dependent on your direct involvement. We've discussed this before. Distributing leadership responsibilities more broadly would strengthen the organization long-term. She paused. Personally speaking, Max, I've always thought your isolation was a choice that carried costs you weren't calculating. Elaborate, he requested. You've optimized your life for efficiency and achievement, which has served Quantum extraordinarily well. But humans aren't algorithms. We need connection. Something beyond professional accomplishment or financial success. Sophia met his gaze directly. These girls may not have been part of your life plan, but perhaps they're the variable that makes the equation work in ways you haven't considered. Max found her perspective surprisingly resonant with his own emerging thoughts. The girls have distinct personalities despite their identical genetics. Emma shows exceptional mathematical aptitude. Grace has eidetic memory and musical talent. Lily demonstrates remarkable emotional intelligence and leadership qualities. Sophia smiled. You've already memorized their individual traits. That tells me more about your internal decision process than anything else. She rose to leave. Whatever you decide, Max, I suspect Harrison Brooks isn't your biggest challenge anymore. Creating space in your perfectly ordered life for 3 unpredictable children will require more adaptation than any corporate takeover you've engineered. After she left, Max turned to his computer and opened a secure file he'd created, titled Integration Scenarios. The document contained detailed analysis of various approaches to incorporating the triplets into his life, ranging from minimal involvement, financial support, occasional visits, to complete custody transfer, requiring significant residential, educational, and lifestyle modifications. His phone rang, Walter Simmons calling with updates on the legal framework. I've prepared documentation for financial trusts regardless of your custody decision, the attorney reported. As for the custody options, I've outlined 3 potential approaches based on your instructions. And the legal action against Goldman. Pharmaceuticals? The evidence strongly supports a case for unauthorized use of genetic material. Claire Bennett's position as lead researcher creates clear liability for the company. However, pursuing legal action would make the situation public almost immediately. I've documented potential settlement parameters if you prefer to handle it privately. Max considered the implications. Public legal action would expose the girls to media attention they hadn't consented to, potentially disrupting their already challenging lives. A private settlement could address the ethical breach without additional trauma to the children. Proceed with the private approach, Max decided. Draft settlement terms that include substantial funding for Harmony House and similar facilities, in addition to any personal compensation. A generous and sensitive approach, Walter noted approvingly. There's one other matter, the board disclosure requirement. As controlling shareholder with no designated heirs, the confirmed existence of biological children constitutes material information for governance purposes. I'm addressing that tomorrow, Max assured him. I've called a private meeting with Lawrence Turner to discuss succession planning. After concluding the call, Max found himself drawn back to Grace's note with its 3 small stick figures. The primitive drawing had remained on his desk, a tangible reminder of the human reality behind the legal and corporate calculations. Making a decision, he picked up his phone and dialed the number Grace had written down. After several rings, Sarah Mitchell's voice answered. Harmony House, Sarah speaking. Ms. Mitchell, this is Maxwell Donovan. I'd like to speak with the triplets, if they're available. A brief pause. Of course, Mr. Donovan. They're just finishing dinner. I'll get them. While waiting, Max could hear the background sounds of the orphanage, children's voices, clattering dishes, the organized chaos of communal living. The ambient noise was so different from the pristine silence of his penthouse or the controlled environment of Quantum's executive floor. Mr. Donovan. It was Lily's voice, characteristically taking the lead. Are you calling about Aurora? Not specifically, Max replied, finding himself unexpectedly uncertain how to proceed. I wanted to check how you were doing. We're okay, Lily answered. Emma won the math competition at school yesterday. She beat the 6th graders. That's impressive, Max said sincerely. May I speak with her? Some rustling sounds, then Emma's voice came on the line. Hello, Mr. Donovan. Did Lily tell you about the math competition? I used the strategy you showed me with the geometric sequences. She mentioned it. Congratulations on your success. Max found himself genuinely pleased by her achievement. Your analytical skills are exceptional. Thank you, Emma replied, sounding pleased. Are you coming back to check on your car? Mr. Mitchell at the garage says it needs special parts. I'm considering a visit this weekend, Max said, the decision crystallizing as he spoke. Would that be acceptable to you and your sisters? The excitement in Emma's voice was unmistakable. Yes, I can show you my competition medal, and Grace has been practicing piano to show you. And Lily made a whole presentation about how orphanages work because she thought you might be interested in the organizational system. The thought of each girl preparing something to share with him created an unexpected emotional response that Max carefully catalogued for later analysis. I look forward to seeing all of those things. May I speak with Grace briefly? Another shuffle, then Grace's soft voice. Hello, Mr. Donovan. Hello, Grace. I received your note with the drawing. Thank you for including your phone number. You're welcome, she replied. Did Aurora miss us? The question carried more significance than its surface meaning. She's maintained your interaction data. Your unique voice patterns and conversational approaches remain in her system. So she remembers us, Grace translated. Yes, Max confirmed. She remembers. After saying goodbye to the girls, Max remained at his desk, processing the conversation. The call had been brief, but consequential. He had committed to returning to Harmony House, taking a concrete step toward involvement in their lives. His calendar appeared on his computer screen, a meticulously organized grid of meetings, calls, and strategic planning sessions. With methodical precision, Max began rearranging commitments to create space for a weekend visit to Cypress Cove. The Tokyo call would proceed tonight. The Timmins final negotiation could be handled Thursday. The board's succession presentation needed refinement but was conceptually sound. A notification appeared from his home automation system, his housekeeper asking about weekend plans for the penthouse. Max paused, considering the sterile luxury of his living space, designed for a solitary occupant focused on efficiency rather than comfort. The space would require significant modifications to accommodate children, particularly 3 active 9-year-olds with distinct personalities and needs. He opened a real estate search application, entering parameters for properties in San Francisco, with multiple bedrooms, secure grounds, and proximity to quality educational institutions. Several options appeared, including a historic residence in Pacific Heights with 6 bedrooms, a garden, and a recently renovated carriage house that could serve as a home office. Max saved the search results, neither committing to nor dismissing the possibility of a complete residential change. One step at a time, he reminded himself, a weekend visit first, then careful evaluation of the girl's response to his presence and the potential disclosure of their biological connection. The office phone chimed with Vanessa's voice. Mr. Donovan, Chairman Turner is asking if you can meet for dinner tonight before your Tokyo call. He says it's regarding your succession planning discussion. Confirm for 7 p.m. at Lucien's, Max responded, naming a discreet restaurant where the board often conducted sensitive business conversations. The pieces were falling into place with the precision Max applied to all aspects of his life. Yet beneath the careful planning ran a current of uncertainty, a recognition that algorithms and strategic frameworks couldn't fully predict or control the human elements of the situation. 3 young girls with his eyes and distinct manifestations of his cognitive traits, each developing their own personalities and expectations, a board growing restless with his leadership approach, a company dependent on his direction, yet needing to evolve beyond it, and at the center, Maxwell Donovan himself, confronting the possibility that his carefully constructed isolation had been not an optimization but a limitation, a variable incorrectly calculated in his life's equation. As evening approached, Max prepared for his dinner with Lawrence Turner, knowing the conversation would set the stage for tomorrow's board presentation and potentially for a fundamental restructuring of both his professional and personal reality. The decision matrix was complex, the outcomes unpredictable in ways his analytical mind found both challenging and surprisingly invigorating. For perhaps the first time since founding Quantum Horizon, Max found himself navigating terrain that couldn't be fully mapped in advance, only experienced step by step, adjustment by adjustment, connection by connection. Lutyens occupied the top floor of a historic building in the financial district, its understated elegance and private dining alcoves making it a favorite among San Francisco's corporate elite. Lawrence Turner was already seated in a secluded corner when Max arrived, nursing a glass of his preferred single malt scotch. "Max," the chairman greeted him, rising slightly as Max took his seat. At 72, Turner remained impressively vigorous, his mind as sharp as when he'd first backed Quantum Horizon 15 years earlier. "I appreciate you making time before your Tokyo call." "Your request seemed important," Max replied, as the waiter silently poured water and disappeared. "I assume it concerns tomorrow's board presentation." Turner nodded, studying Max with the perception that had made him a legendary venture capitalist. "I wanted to understand your thinking before you present to the full board. Your offer to provide a succession framework was unexpected, particularly after years of resistance to the very idea." Max considered his response carefully. The DNA confirmation had solidified his path forward, but the specific approach to communicating it required strategic precision. "Circumstances evolve," he said finally. "The board's concerns about centralized leadership have merit. Quantum has grown beyond the stage where a single decision-maker is optimal for operations." Turner's eyebrows rose slightly. "That's quite a reversal from your position last quarter. What's changed, Max?" The direct question required a measured response. "I've been re-evaluating the balance between operational control and organizational resilience. A company valued at $800 billion requires structural redundancy and distributed decision-making to maintain stability." "A sound business analysis," Turner acknowledged, "but incomplete. Harrison Brooks believes your sudden interest in succession planning stems from personal developments." He paused. "There are rumors about your delay in Cypress Cove involving children." Max had anticipated this line of inquiry. "Brooks has always been eager to find weaknesses in my leadership approach." "True," Turner conceded. "But he's also well connected to your transportation staff, the children's home, the county records office. These aren't typical stops for Quantum CEO." The waiter returned to take their order. Max selected his meal, automatically, his mind calculating approaches to the inevitable disclosure. Once the waiter departed, he made his decision. "Lawrence, before we continue this conversation, I need your commitment to confidentiality until tomorrow's board meeting." Turner's interest visibly sharpened. "You have it, of course." Max leaned forward slightly. "During my enforced stay in Cypress Cove, I discovered I have biological children, identical triplet girls, age 9, living at Harmony House Children's Home. DNA testing has confirmed paternity." Turner set down his scotch, momentarily speechless. "My God, Max, that's unexpected." "Indeed. Their mother was a researcher on a fertility study I participated in a decade ago. She used my genetic material without authorization to conceive. The children, she passed away 2 years ago, leaving the girls at the orphanage. And you had no knowledge of their existence until your car conveniently broke down at their doorstep?" Turner asked, his tone balanced between skepticism and amazement. "The statistical improbability is noteworthy," Max agreed. "I've verified the timeline and circumstances. Their mother Dr. Claire Bennett, was a respected biochemist specializing in reproductive technology. The girls have my distinctive eye color and show cognitive traits consistent with genetic inheritance from me. Turner took a measured sip of his scotch. This explains your sudden interest in succession planning. Biological heirs change the equation considerably. It's one factor among several, Max confirmed. I'm still evaluating the optimal approach to integration and custody arrangements. Integration, Turner repeated. You're considering taking custody? I'm exploring multiple scenarios, ranging from financial support to full legal guardianship. Turner studied him with the same analytical gaze he'd applied to thousands of investment opportunities over his career. In 15 years, I've never seen you uncertain about a strategic direction, Max. This situation has affected you more deeply than you're acknowledging. Max didn't confirm or deny the observation. My presentation tomorrow will outline a leadership. Restructuring that distributes strategic functions across a senior team while maintaining appropriate oversight of Quantum's core technologies. It will address the board's concerns, regardless of my personal decisions regarding the children. The board will have questions about timing and motivation, Turner warned. Harrison particularly will frame this as a crisis-driven reaction rather than thoughtful planning. The framework has been in development for months, Max countered, which was technically true. He had been considering organizational restructuring options, though without intention to implement them immediately. Recent events have simply accelerated the timeline for presentation. Their meals arrived, and the conversation shifted briefly to the Timmons acquisition and Tokyo negotiations. Max provided precise updates on both situations, demonstrating his continued command of Quantum's strategic operations. As they concluded dinner, Turner leaned back in his chair. Max, speaking not as your chairman, but as someone who's known you, since Quantum was 5 employees in a rented warehouse, are you prepared for how children will change your life? Particularly 3 children who've already experienced significant loss. The question struck at the core of Max's ongoing calculations. I'm researching child development extensively. I've consulted with psychologists specializing in adoption and multiple birth children. I've analyzed the educational, residential, and emotional requirements. Turner smiled slightly. That's exactly what I mean. You're approaching parenthood like a system to be optimized. Children don't follow algorithmic growth patterns or respond predictably to defined inputs. I recognize the inherent variability, Max acknowledged. The triplets themselves demonstrate how identical genetic material can manifest in distinct personalities and cognitive preferences. And yet you're still considering this path, Turner observed. That tells me something fundamental has shifted in your perspective, Max. For someone who has built his entire life around control and predictability, openness to this level of disruption is remarkable. Max considered this assessment. The variables are complex. Indeed they are, Turner agreed, signaling for the check. I'll support your succession framework tomorrow, provided it maintains appropriate technological oversight. Harrison will push back, of course, but most of the board will appreciate the proactive approach. He paused. When do you plan to see the children again? This weekend, Max replied. I've arranged a visit to Harmony House. And will you tell them you're their father? The question gave Max pause. He had calculated multiple disclosure scenarios, weighing the psychological impact against the ethics of continued non-disclosure. I'm consulting with child psychologists about the optimal approach and timing. They've already experienced significant upheaval with their mother's death. Further disruption requires careful management. Turner nodded thoughtfully. A considerate response. Perhaps there's hope for you as a father after all. The following morning, Max stood before Quantum Horizons' board of directors, presenting the succession framework he had refined overnight. The plan was comprehensive, distributing his current responsibilities across a senior leadership team while maintaining his role as executive chairman with oversight of technological direction. This restructuring addresses our growth challenges, while preserving the innovation culture that defines quantum. Max concluded, his delivery precise and confident. The transition would occur over 6 months, allowing for systematic transfer of responsibilities and appropriate market communication. The board's reactions varied predictably. Several senior members nodded approval, recognizing the balanced approach to their long-standing concerns. Harrison Brooks appeared frustrated that his anticipated opportunity to challenge Max's leadership had been preemptively addressed. "This is an impressive framework," Lawrence Turner acknowledged, "though its sudden appearance raises questions about timing. Perhaps you could address the personal developments that have influenced this decision." The opening was exactly as Max had anticipated. With methodical calm, he outlined the discovery of his biological daughters, the confirmation of paternity, and his ongoing evaluation of custody options. He presented the information with his characteristic precision, though he noted the board's expressions shifting from professional interest to human curiosity as the explanation progressed. "These children would be your heirs to a significant ownership stake in quantum," Brooks noted, finding a potential challenge point. "Are they prepared for such responsibility? Do they even understand what this company does?" "They're 9 years old," Max replied evenly. "Their readiness for corporate governance is a long-term consideration, not an immediate concern. However, I should note that when briefly introduced to Aurora's systems, they demonstrated remarkable comprehension of AI fundamentals. Emma, in particular, grasped neural network principles that many of our junior engineers struggle with." He hadn't intended the observation as a point of pride, merely as a factual assessment, yet several board members smiled at what they clearly interpreted as paternal admiration. "What are your immediate plans regarding the children?" Sophia asked, steering the conversation toward practical considerations. "I'm visiting them this weekend to continue building rapport," Max explained. "Concurrently, I'm consulting with specialists in adoption psychology and establishing appropriate legal and financial frameworks. The succession plan presented today provides organizational stability, regardless of my personal decisions regarding custody." By the time the board meeting concluded, Max had secured approval for his leadership restructuring framework and navigated the disclosure of his newfound paternity with minimal disruption. Several board members offered surprisingly personal congratulations, and even Harrison Brooks had moderated his opposition in the face of Max's transparent handling of the situation. Back in his office, Max turned his attention to preparations for his weekend visit to Harmony House. He had arranged for appropriate gifts for each girl, advanced mathematics texts, and a tablet with educational software for Emma, a digital piano keyboard with headphones for Grace, and a set of leadership and public speaking books for Lily. Each selection was tailored to their demonstrated interests and abilities, though Max found himself questioning whether the gifts were too academic in nature. On impulse, he called Sarah Mitchell at Harmony House. "Mr. Donovan," she answered warmly, "the girls are quite excited about your visit tomorrow. They've been planning what to show you all week." "I'm calling about gift appropriateness," Max explained. "I've selected educational materials aligned with their interests, but I'm uncertain if this approach is optimal for children their age." There was a pause. Then Sarah chuckled softly. "It's refreshing to hear someone so thoughtful about gifts. Educational materials are wonderful, especially for these particular girls. They genuinely love learning. But perhaps consider adding something purely fun as well. Something that doesn't have to be productive or educational." The concept of purely fun items required recalibration of Max's approach. "Do you have suggestions?" Lily loves adventure stories, fiction books about explorers or detectives. Emma collects interesting rocks and minerals. Grace enjoys art supplies. She draws when she's not playing piano. Simple things that connect to who they are, not just what they can achieve. Max absorbed this advice. Thank you for the insight. There's one other matter. I've been consulting with child psychologists about timing for disclosure of my biological relationship to the girls. What's your assessment of their readiness for such information? Sarah took a moment before responding. They're remarkably resilient children, Mr. Donovan, but they've also experienced profound loss. Their mother was their entire world, and then she was gone. The possibility of a father, especially one who didn't know they existed rather than one who abandoned them, would be significant news. So, a gradual approach would be advisable? I think so, yes. They already find you interesting and enjoy your company. That connection matters more than biological relationship at first. When they feel secure in your presence and consistent interest, the truth will be easier to integrate into their understanding of themselves. Max noted the wisdom in this perspective. I appreciate your guidance, Ms. Mitchell. I'll see you tomorrow morning. After the call, Max modified his shopping plans, adding adventure novels for Lily, a high-quality rock and mineral collection kit for Emma, and professional-grade drawing supplies for Grace. The adjustments felt appropriate, balancing achievement-oriented materials with items purely for enjoyment. As he finalized arrangements for his weekend away from San Francisco, Max recognized an unfamiliar emotion surfacing beneath his typical methodical planning, anticipation tinged with nervousness. The Tokyo negotiations had concluded successfully. The Timmons acquisition was proceeding on schedule. The board had accepted his succession framework. All standard operational metrics were within optimal parameters. Yet his thoughts kept returning to three small faces with his eyes, each with distinct expressions of the same underlying features, to Emma's analytical questions about Aurora's learning patterns, to Grace's perfect memory reproduction of the interface design, to Lily's perceptive observations about emotions hidden beneath surface presentations. For a man who had built his existence around predictability and control, the unpredictable nature of children, of family, represented a fundamental paradigm shift. The environmental variables alone were complex: residential modifications, educational requirements, psychological support systems, integration timelines. But the emotional variables were even less predictable, both the children's and, surprisingly, his own. The unfamiliar anticipation he felt about seeing them again could not be quantified in his usual analytical frameworks. Maxwell Donovan, who had engineered predictive algorithms that could anticipate market shifts months in advance, found himself unable to predict with confidence how 3 9-year-old girls would respond to his continued presence in their lives, or how that presence would reshape his own carefully constructed existence. The uncertainty should have been destabilizing. Instead, he found it curiously compelling. 6 months later, the sprawling Victorian home in Pacific Heights buzzed with activity as movers carried the last pieces of furniture inside. The historic residence, with its 6 bedrooms, extensive gardens, and renovated carriage house converted to a home office, bore little resemblance to Max's former minimalist penthouse. Emma supervised the installation of bookshelves in what would become their shared library, clipboard in hand, as she checked items off a meticulous list. Grace directed the placement of her new piano in the music room, her soft voice surprisingly authoritative when explaining the importance of proper positioning for acoustics. Lily darted between rooms, coordinating her sister's efforts while simultaneously directing the setup of their shared game room. On the porch, Max stood with Sarah Mitchell, watching the organized chaos with a mixture of amazement and pride. "They've adapted remarkably well," Sarah observed. "Though I'm not surprised. They've always been extraordinarily resilient. The transition plan provided appropriate preparation time, Max replied, though he knew the success went beyond his careful scheduling and progressive integration strategy. The truth was simpler. The girls wanted to be there with him as much as he wanted them. The past 6 months had unfolded in carefully measured stages. Weekend visits to Harmony House had extended to the girls visiting his temporary home in San Francisco. Family therapy sessions had helped navigate the complexity of building relationships and processing grief. The disclosure of their biological connection had come 3 months in, when their psychologist had deemed them ready. Max remembered that day with perfect clarity, sitting with the triplets in Harmony House's small garden, explaining how their mother had been a brilliant scientist who had used his genetic material to create them. "So you're our real dad?" Lily had asked, directness as always her default approach. "Biologically speaking, yes," Max had confirmed, "though I didn't know until we met after the storm." The girls had exchanged their silent communication glance before Emma spoke. "That explains the statistical improbability of our identical eye color. Mom always said we got our eyes from our father. And our math skills," Grace had added quietly. "Mom said that came from him too." "Your mother was correct," Max had acknowledged. "Though each of you expresses those inherited traits differently, that's what makes you unique, despite sharing identical genetics." Their reactions had been as individual as their personalities. Emma had immediately asked detailed questions about genetic inheritance. Grace had grown quiet, processing the information internally. Lily had wanted to know what happened next. "What happens next," Max had told them, "is whatever you decide. I would like to be part of your lives, to provide a home for you. But only if that's what you want too." Their unanimous decision had led to today, moving day. The formal adoption had been finalized the previous week, with the girls officially becoming Emma, Grace, and Lily Donovan. "Mr. Mitchell called from the garage," Sarah said, interrupting Max's reflections. "Your car is finally repaired, 6 months later." Max smiled slightly. The timing worked out appropriately. We needed those 6 months of transition. Sarah studied him, with the perceptive gaze that had first noticed his resemblance to the triplets. "You've changed, Mr. Donovan. When you first arrived at Harmony House, you were all sharp edges and precise calculations. Now you actually smile occasionally." "I'm still precise," Max pointed out, checking his watch. "The piano tuner arrives in exactly 37 minutes. Of course you are?" Sarah laughed. "But precision and warmth aren't mutually exclusive, as you're discovering." Inside, a minor disagreement had broken out between Emma and Lily about the arrangement of the science equipment in their study area. Max excused himself and moved to mediate, applying the conflict resolution strategies he'd studied extensively since becoming a parent. "The microscope requires optimal lighting," Emma was explaining, her tone measured but insistent. "This position by the window provides natural illumination. But the rock collection looks better on the display shelf where everyone can see it." Lily countered. "The microscope can go on the desk with a lamp." "What if we adjusted both positions?" Max suggested, entering the conversation. "The display shelf could be angled to catch natural light while remaining visible, and the microscope could have a dedicated space with both natural and supplemental lighting." The girls considered this compromise, Emma calculating light angles, while Lily visualized the aesthetic arrangement. "That could work," Emma conceded. "If we install an adjustable shelf bracket, we could optimize for both visibility and functionality." "I'll get the tools," Lily decided, her natural leadership engaging with the solution. "Grace is better at measuring angles than I am." As they moved to implement the compromise, Max marveled at how negotiations that would have seemed inconsequential 6 months ago now held his complete attention. The triplets had restructured his priorities more effectively than any corporate reorganization. At Quantum Horizon, the leadership transition had proceeded according to his framework. Sophia had stepped into the CEO role with expected competence, while Max maintained oversight of technological development as executive chairman. His reduced schedule, 3 days in the office, 2 working from home, had raised eyebrows initially, but the company's continued growth had silenced critics. Even Harrison Brooks had moderated his opposition after meeting the triplets at the company's family day, visibly impressed by Emma's questions about ethical AI development and Grace's perfect recollection of Quantum's mission statement after hearing it only once. The girl's education had been another carefully optimized system. After evaluating 17 potential schools, Max had selected Westlake Academy, which offered both academic challenge and emotional support. The administration had worked with him to create individualized learning plans that allowed each girl to progress at her own pace in different subjects while maintaining their essential connection as triplets. "Dad!" Grace called from the music room, still using the title with careful deliberation 6 months after learning of their biological connection. "The piano movers need to know where to put the bench." The word "dad" continued to create an unfamiliar warmth each time he heard it. Max moved to the music room, where Grace waited with an expression of mingled excitement and uncertainty. The Steinway grand piano that had replaced Harmony House's worn upright represented a significant investment in her musical development. "What would be optimal for your playing position?" Max asked, respecting her developing expertise. Grace considered seriously. "I think centered, but slightly to the left to allow for page turning." "A sound analysis," Max approved. "The acoustics specialist will be here tomorrow to finalize the room treatments." Grace nodded, then hesitated before asking, "Do you think Mom would like that I have a real piano now?" The question, a rare direct reference to Claire, caught Max momentarily off guard. The girls spoke of their mother often, keeping her memory alive while gradually creating space for new attachments. Max had encouraged this, recognizing the importance of honoring their past while building their future. "Based on everything you've told me about her, I believe she would be extraordinarily proud," Max answered carefully. "Not because of the piano itself, but because of your dedication to developing your talent." Grace's smile was small but genuine. She used to say that talent is just the beginning. What matters is what you build with it. "A wise perspective," Max agreed. "She gave you extraordinary foundations. My role is to help you continue building." Later, that evening, after the movers had departed and the piano tuner had finished his work, Max found himself on the back porch with the girls, observing the sunset over the bay. The garden below would need extensive work to accommodate their various interests. A greenhouse for Emma's scientific experiments, an outdoor art space for Grace, and an adventure course for Lily's boundless energy. "This is really our home now," Lily said, the wonder in her voice revealing that despite her confident exterior, the transition still felt momentous. "It is," Max confirmed, "though the structure itself is less important than the family unit it contains." Emma, ever analytical, added, "Statistically, less than 8% of orphaned siblings our age find permanent placement together. The probability of triplets remaining united and finding adoption is less than 0.3%. We beat the odds," Lily concluded proudly. "With strategic intervention," Max noted, acknowledging his own role in altering the statistical outcome. Grace, who had been quietly observing the garden, suddenly asked, "Will you stay with us forever?" Some kids at Harmony House said their new parents changed their minds. The question revealed the lingering vulnerability beneath their successful transition. Max chose his words with care, recognizing the importance of absolute truth in building trust. In human relationships, forever cannot be guaranteed with mathematical certainty, he began, his honesty respectful of their intelligence. But I can provide you with the relevant data. I have restructured my entire professional life to accommodate our family requirements. I have invested in educational trusts that extend through your doctoral studies, should you choose that path. I have modified my will to ensure your security regardless of circumstance. He paused, then added something that would have been unthinkable for the Maxwell Donovan who had first arrived at Harmony House. Most significantly, I have discovered that my optimal functioning now includes your presence. In simple terms, my life works better with you in it. The girls absorbed this information in their individual ways. Emma analyzing the practical commitments, Grace attending to the emotional undertones, Lily focusing on the bottom-line conclusion. Our lives work better with you too, Lily announced, speaking for all three in her leadership role. That's a stable algorithm. Indeed it is, Max agreed, surprising himself with a genuine smile, an expression that had become increasingly natural over the past 6 months. As darkness fell, they moved inside to their new home. 3 unique girls and the man whose life had been transformed by their unexpected appearance. The improbable family created not through traditional means, but through a storm, a broken car, and the undeniable connection of shared genetics and growing emotional bonds. For a man who had built his existence on prediction and control, Maxwell, Donovan had embraced the beautiful uncertainty of parenthood, discovering in 3 identical faces with his eyes a future he could never have calculated, but now couldn't imagine living without. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.